Hello students, so we are back with another chapter, that is chapter 9 of your chemistry portion. The chapter name is hydrogen. Now when you talk about hydrogen, the first thing what comes to your mind is it is the first element, right? And as you know, it is said to be the most abundant element which is present in the universe. It consists of around 70% of the mass of universe, so that is made up of hydrogen. And as you all know, it is used in the production of water. Now the word hydrogen, okay, hydro in the sense it is water, okay, and gene in the sense it is in Greek, okay, hydro in the sense it is water, and gene in the sense it is producing. So this element can produce water when it burns in the presence of oxygen. So that is how you produce water. And as you all know, hydrogen is present in most of the compounds. As it combines or reacts with most of the compounds, it is easily available. And hydrogen was discovered by a scientist named Henry Cavendish in the 17th century. Okay, so this is the brief introduction about hydrogen, wherein the atomic number of hydrogen is said to be 1, right? And you write the electronic configuration as 1s1, and the atom of hydrogen consists of 1 electron and 1 proton. Now, as you all know, in the nature or in the elemental form, hydrogen exists as a diatomic molecule, which is H2 gas, hydrogen gas. Okay, it cannot exist as hydrogen atom, which is said to be very unstable because it has only 1 electron. So it tries to combine with another hydrogen and becomes a hydrogen gas, which is H2 molecule, or also it is called dihydrogen. H2 is called the dihydrogen. So this is how it becomes stable, and mostly in the elemental form it is found to be H2. Okay. Now, so this was the introduction about hydrogen. Let us move on slowly, okay, in detail about what is hydrogen, which are the different types which are present, okay, and also what are their properties, their chemical properties, physical properties. All these will be studying in this chapter. So let me talk about firstly the position of hydrogen now. Hydrogen, as you all know, it is said to be the lightest, most abundant and the first element which comes in the periodic table. Why? On what basis is the periodic table made? It is based on the electronic configuration, right, or the atomic number. So based on the electronic configuration, the hydrogen has an electronic configuration of 1s1, and that is why it is said to be the first element. So hydrogen has an atomic number 1 and the electronic configuration is 1s1. Now is it said to be stable here? No, it is not stable. It requires another electron, or it tries to lose electrons, forming H plus or H minus. So hydrogen has a property of becoming a positive ion or a negative ion. Okay, so that is one thing to be remembered. Now talking about this position, as you all know, there is still a confusion in the position of hydrogen. There is, if you check the periodic table, there is a separate position which is given to hydrogen. Okay. Now, as you all know, it is similar to the properties of alkali metals and also the halogens. Now, alkali metals are nothing but they come in which group? They come in first group of the periodic table, and this one is 17th group, correct? Halogens. So halogens, what do? They try to gain one electron and become stable, whereas alkali metals try to lose electrons and become stable. So that's the basic property of how hydrogen behaves like alkali metals and halogens. So hydrogen, what does it do? It tries to lose electron and become stable, just like alkali metals. For example, if you have lithium, lithium has how many electrons? It has 1s2, 2s1, right? So here it tries to lose one electron and become stable. So just like that, hydrogen also loses an electron and becomes stable as H plus. Halogens, what do? They try to gain electrons. For there 2p5 would be there, right? So it takes up an electron and becomes 2p6, and that is how they become stable. So hydrogen also behaves like halogen by gaining electrons, that is forming hydrides that is H minus. So hydrogen, can act like an alkali metal too, it can act like a halogen too. Now let us see what are those properties wherein they are similar, wherein we say that they are similar to alkali metals as well as halogens. Let us see that. So first, talking about electronic configuration, as you all know, hydrogen is 1s1. So they are similar to alkali metals, right? So they are almost similar to alkali metals. So we can say we can place them near the position of the alkali metals itself. No, but halogens also it can behave like halogens. Hydrogen can behave. In what way? Let us see. First of all, that is electronic configuration, that is one thing. And talking about the electropositivity. What do you mean by electropositivity? The tendency to lose electrons. That is how an element becomes electropositive. That is, loss of electron makes it positive, or tendency to lose electrons. Now, as I told you, hydrogen can lose electron and become electropositive just like the alkali metals. And in the same way, at the same time, electronegativity property can also be exhibited by the hydrogen. How? By gaining an electron. So as I told, they can have both the properties. Now where to place this hydrogen? No. So there is still a confusion. Okay, again, if you are talking about ionization enthalpy. Now what do you mean by ionization enthalpy? It is the energy, minimum energy required to remove an electron from the outermost shell of an atom. Now energy required to remove an electron. Ionization enthalpy, if you are talking about alkali metals, they are said to be very less. But halogens, as the along the period, the ionization enthalpy increases because there is high nuclear charge. Do you remember? So here, when you are talking about halogens, there is high ionization enthalpy in general. When you are talking about alkali metals, there is less ionization enthalpy. Okay, now if you see the values here, lithium has 520 kilojoules per mole. This is said to be an alkali metal, right? Then you have fluorine, which is 1680 kilojoules per mole. Then you have hydrogen, which is 1012 kilojoules per mole. So there is a value nearer here, whether it is to the alkali metals or whether it is to the halogens, it is near to the halogens. So again, hydrogen behaves like a halogen over here when you compare the ionization enthalpy property. So still, such kind of properties, made a confusion, created a confusion whether to place hydrogen in the first group or the 17th group. And also, now, if you are taking the hydrogen, which has one electron in the outermost shell, okay, if you try removing that electron, okay, what happens to the size of the atom? It decreases. Now this decrease in the size of an atom is around 0.001 into 10 to the power, into 10 to the power minus 12, that is picometer. Okay, so see that the size of the atom is so reduced here when it is becoming H plus, that is removal of electron. But when you compare all the other atoms, okay, in the periodic table, when they try ionizing, their radii is said to be around 50 to 200 picometer, which is much bigger value when compared to the radius of this hydrogen, as you can see. So here, as it has a unique behavior or a different character when compared to other elements, okay, in order to lessen the confusion, what did they do? They placed the hydrogen in a separate manner or in a separate position, giving it a unique behavior, and that's why hydrogen was placed in a different position. Okay, you see on the top of the periodic table, it is given a separate box. It is not with alkali metals or halogens or any other. It is given separately, but based on what? Based on the electronic configuration of that particular atom. So as electronic configuration is 1s1, which means there is only one electron. So based on electronic configuration, the elements are placed, and that's why hydrogen is given the first position and a unique separate position is given. So this is about the position of hydrogen. Now as you all know, there are different isotopes for hydrogen present in the nature. So what are isotopes? Isotopes are the atoms of same element which have same atomic number but different mass number, right? So hydrogen has mainly the three isotopes, which is protium, deuterium and tritium. Now these three isotopes you all have already studied in the classification chapter, classification of elements. Now let me talk about it, okay, once again. So protium as hydrogen, okay, it can be written as the hydrogen which is having atomic number 1. It consists of one electron only, but as you all know, it is the same atomic number but different number of mass number, right? Different mass number, which means that the number of neutrons will be varying here, or number of neutrons will be different, okay? So here hydrogen, the electron will be same, but what happens to the number of neutrons? It keeps changing. So protium, which is the first one, has a mass number of 1 itself and atomic number 1. Same atomic number everywhere, hydrogen is 1. But here it has a mass number of 1, which means that it doesn't have any neutron. It has only one proton. Okay. So this is said to be the common abundant hydrogen which is present in the nature. Around 99.9% is this protium which is present, okay, as hydrogen in the nature. So this is one which has one proton and one electron. So there are no neutrons in protium, okay. That is one thing. And talking about the second one, which is deuterium. Deuterium in the sense duo. That is 2. So here the mass number is said to be 2. Here tritium, in the sense it is 3. Okay. So the mass number is 3. So here deuterium, it is actually present in heavy metals. It is around 0.005% of the hydrogen which is present in the nature. This is 99%, which is the most abundant. So deuterium has how many protons and how many neutrons? It has one proton and one neutron, okay, which makes the mass number 2 over here. So this is present in heavy water, okay, deuterium oxide. It is present as D2O, okay, and this deuterium from this heavy water can be separated by separate electrolysis or fractional electrolysis. It can be separated by this method from the heavy water. So this is usually present in heavy water, which is the deuterium, okay. And the third one, which is tritium. Tritium has a mass number of 3, which means that it has one proton itself, because number of electrons is equal to number of protons. So it has one proton, and how many neutrons are present? There are 2 neutrons. So here tritium, okay, it is said to be the rarest isotope, as it is said to be radioactive in nature, okay. They are very unstable and they keep on emitting the beta particles, very weak beta particles. So that is how they are said to be radioactive and very unstable. So the third isotope is said to be radioactive, whereas this is present in a very less amount, okay, mainly in heavy water as deuterium oxide, and protium is said to be the common abundant isotope, which is present at around 99% in nature. So these are the 3 isotopes. So isotopes having same atomic number and different mass number. One is protium, deuterium and tritium. So deuterium can be also denoted as capital letter D. Okay, either you can write H12 or D. This is tritium is T. Okay. So these are the isotopes of hydrogen. We will study another form of hydrogen which is present in nature, that is hydrides. So usually when you're talking about hydrides, metals or any of the non-metals, they do form hydrides. So hydrides will be in the form NaH. Na is sodium hydride. So how will you write the formula? As NaH. Now, this dihydrogen or the hydrogen gas, it can combine with most of the elements, okay, almost all of the elements forming this hydride. For example, magnesium hydride, Mg, okay, it is combining with dihydrogen forming MgH2, correct? So here, this is magnesium hydride. So in the same way, most of the elements or all the elements can combine with dihydrogen, forming their own hydrides, except for noble gases under some reaction conditions. Okay, it is possible, but there is some reaction condition which is to be undertaken for the noble gases to combine and form hydrides. Whereas usually in the particular reaction condition, almost all of the elements can combine together and form their one of the example, that is magnesium hydride, and then you have B2H6, okay, which is also called diborane. So this is also a form of hydride, okay. So in this way it can be written. These are some of the examples which is to be understood. Now this is a new compound for you all, that is B2H6, which is boron with a hydride. So it is called diborane. Okay, diborane. Why? Because there are two boron atoms present. Okay, so talking about hydrides, mainly there are three types. Okay, they are classified into three sections. So the first one is the ionic hydrides. Ionic, okay, ionic hydrides, or they are also called saline, which is like salt-like, okay, salt-like, or they are also salt-like hydrides. To understand it way better, okay. So this is one of the type of hydride. So ionic or saline or salt-like hydride. That's the first type. Then you have the second one, that is covalent or molecular hydrides. So if one has to be ionic, then the other one will be covalent or molecular hydrides. Okay, molecular hydrides. And the last one is the metallic hydrides. Metallic hydrides. So especially we are talking about metals over here. So that is metallic, or it is also called non-stoichiometric. Non-stoichiometric. What is it? I will tell you. Non-stoichiometric hydride. So these are the three major types of this division of hydrides. So first one is ionic hydride, the second one is covalent hydride, and the third one is metallic or non-stoichiometric hydrides. Now let's talk about these one by one. What are these and their properties? Talking about the first one, that is ionic hydride or saline or salt-like hydrides. Now ionic, in the sense you actually get into your mind, that is the form of ions. What are ions? The charged particles. Now how an atom attains this charged particle? Either by losing electron or gaining electrons, right? So if you are talking about the first one, that is ionic hydride. Ionic hydride. So these are usually formed by the S block elements. Okay, so usually ionic hydrides, so you are talking about the division of hydrides, how hydrides are formed according to various elements or various compounds. Okay, so ionic hydrides are mainly formed by which block elements? Those are S block elements. So these are formed by usually the S block elements. Okay, now for example, S block, are these two the S block elements? Yes, right? So magnesium is an S block element, sodium is an S block element, lithium is an S block element, right? So here usually MgH2 or lithium hydride or beryllium hydride or sodium hydride. So all these are the examples for S block elements. So S block elements, why? Because these are usually electropositive in nature. What do you mean by electropositive in nature? The tendency to lose electrons. So these elements tend to lose electrons very easily, and that's how they form their own hydrides. Okay, so this is one type, that is ionic hydride. So ionic hydrides are formed by the electropositive elements, that's specially there. Which block? That is S block elements. Now these are usually said to be stoichiometric in nature. Now let's talk about this. Stoichiometric or non-stoichiometric. Stoichiometric in the sense there is a particular proportion by the mass of a particular compound. Now stoichiometric, you know that there is a law that holds good for the proportion of the atoms in a particular compound. That is law of constant proportions, right? So if carbon dioxide is present, how much amount of carbon can combine with oxygen? So there is a proportion in their mass with respect to atoms. So in the same way, all the hydrides which are the ionic hydrides, they are said to be stoichiometric, which means their atoms or their composition will be proportionate according to their masses. It is not that they are non-stoichiometric or they do not have a particular proportion. They are proportionate according to their mass. This is to be remembered. Okay. Now, ionic hydrides, okay, these are usually said to be non-volatile. Non-volatile in the sense they cannot evaporate easily, whereas covalent hydrides can evaporate easily. As you all know, these carbon compounds are said to be volatile in nature. Okay, so here these are said to be non-volatile, that is to be remembered, and also these are non-conductors of electricity in the solid state, right? If suppose if you take sodium hydride in the solid state, okay, do they conduct electricity? Is there any movement of ions taking place when it is in the solid state? No, right? Only when it is in the molten state or in the liquid state, then only they can conduct electricity, as there is movement of ions. But if it is in the solid state, then there is no movement of ions, and hence there is no conduction of electricity. So in the solid state, they do not conduct electricity, whereas when do they conduct electricity? Only in the molten state. So their melts conduct electricity. Ionic hydride, their melts conduct electricity. Okay. So in the molten state, they conduct electricity. That is to be remembered. And usually these will be crystalline in nature. Okay, sodium hydride or all these hydrides, that is ionic. Ionic, when you are talking about, they are usually crystalline in nature. So that is one thing. So these are also crystalline in nature. Okay. Now, as I told, in the solid state, these ionic hydrides do not conduct electricity, only their melts conduct. Why? There is movement of ions, and that is why they can conduct electricity. Now, for example, you can produce this dihydrogen, okay, which was previous form of hydrogen which we are talking about. So, sodium hydride, if you take, when you treat it with water, you pass electricity. So, that is electrolysis. Let me give you an example. Sodium hydride, okay. If an aqueous solution is taken, that's what I said. Only in the aqueous solution or their melts can conduct electricity. So now sodium hydride is taken, that's a normal hydride, and you treat it with water, make it an aqueous solution, and you pass electricity or make the electrolysis of this particular compounds over here. What happens then? What would be formed here? What they can combine and form here? They would form sodium hydroxide, and there is liberation of which gas? That is hydrogen gas, right? So here you see that the hydrogen gas or dihydrogen is being produced over here. So this is one of the method wherein we can get the dihydrogen by the electrolysis of these hydrides too. So from the hydrides, you can actually obtain the dihydrogen which can be liberated. Okay. So this is one of the example saying that these hydrides can also conduct electricity. Okay. So that is one part. Now, lithium, beryllium, magnesium hydrides, okay, are usually covalent in nature. Did I tell you it in the classification of elements chapter, saying that lithium, beryllium and magnesium, these elements are slightly covalent when compared to other s block elements, right? So which are the exceptional cases? Lithium, beryllium as well as magnesium. So these are not said to be that ionic when compared to s block, as they are slightly covalent in nature. They exhibit that covalent character. So that those exceptions you should remember. One is magnesium hydride, the other one is lithium hydride, and then you have beryllium hydride. So these hydrides are covalent, significantly covalent, okay, covalent in nature. Other hydrides are said to be ionic, where we are talking about s block elements. So these are the important applications of hydrides, that is in the preparation of dihydrogen. It can be used up. Now, if you take the examples of these lithium hydride or beryllium hydride or magnesium hydride, which are said to be slightly covalent, okay, these compounds can also be used up in producing different, oxidizing agents or reducing agents, and also some important, compounds of these hydrides. Okay. So here lithium hydride can be treated with aluminium hexafluoride. Okay, aluminium hexafluoride, aluminium hexa, that is 6 fluoride. Okay, giving aluminium hydride with the liberation of, or the byproduct which is formed is LiCl. LiCl. Okay, so this compound which is to be used by these hydrides are mainly the reducing agents, very good reducing agents, especially in the industrial use. So this is one of the application of lithium hydride, that is formation of lithium aluminum hydride, which is used as a reducing agent. Okay, very good reducing agent. So how can you balance this? Here there is Al2, here it should be 2 then, and then you have hydrogen, how many? 4 into 2, that is 8. So here 8 hydrogen. Now lithium is 2, here it is 8. So how many should I fill it here to make it 8? So this should be plus 6 LiCl. So here it is 6Cl6. Okay. So this is one of the application of lithium hydride, where it forms lithium aluminium hydride when treated with aluminum hexachloride, which is said to be a good reducing agent. Another example would be lithium hydride with the diborane. How do you write diborane? That is B2H6. So this would give another important reducing agent, that would be the product. So here it gives lithium borohydride. Lithium borohydride. So this is one of the good reducing agent which is used in industries. Okay. So how do you balance here? This is B2. So here hydrogen is 8. So here it is 2Li. So this is about the ionic hydrides. So you have to remember here what is it. Especially they are S-block elements which are electropositive. Exceptions are lithium, magnesium and beryllium hydrides, which are said to be covalent in nature. And also their melts conduct electricity. How is it formed? That is sodium hydride with H2O. When it is electrolyzed, you get dihydrogen. And also this lithium hydride can be used in the preparation of different reducing agents or important commercial compounds. Okay. So this is about the ionic hydrides. So next let us move on to covalent or molecular hydrides. Secondly we have, that is the covalent or molecular hydrides. So the first one was the ionic, saline or salt-like hydrides. Moving on, the molecular hydrides. Now when you talk about these molecular hydrides, they are usually covalently bonded. Ionic hydrides are due to the formation of ionic bonds. So molecular hydrides will have a covalent nature. Especially this covalent nature is exhibited by the p block elements, which is to your right hand side of the periodic table. So p block elements especially attain this covalent character. Okay. That is covalent character. Why? Because they share electrons, whereas ionic character is due to the losing or gaining of electrons. So here these elements, okay, whenever they form their hydrides, they tend to share their electrons and form their respective hydrides. For example, you have the methane, okay, and ammonia. So these two are the examples for the molecular hydrides, as carbon tends to share its electrons with 4 of the hydrogen atoms and nitrogen tends to share its electrons and form the hydrides. That is why we say it is covalently bonded hydride. Okay. So these are some of the examples for the non-metallic hydride. So especially when you talk about p block elements, the non-metallic hydrides are considered over here. Okay, for covalently or this metallic molecular hydrides, the covalent bond is considered, and especially of which one? That is hydrides or non-metals. Now, as you all know, the covalent character especially is determined by their physical properties. So that is one is that they have less forces of attraction and they are said to be volatile in nature. That is, they can easily evaporate when they are in the form of liquids, so that they can easily evaporate at the room temperature, and that's why they are said to be volatile in nature. So this is one of the introduction of this covalent or molecular hydride. Especially they are p block, they are covalent in nature and they are non-metals. So this is to be remembered. Now, these covalent or molecular hydrides are again classified into three categories. Okay. Now, based on what are these classified, that you should understand first, so that you can understand it in a better way of what are the properties of these three classifications. So, first of all, they are classified based on the Lewis structures. So, I hope you remember what is the Lewis dot structure. Now, if you have carbon, okay, the valence electrons are put as dots over the atoms, okay, so that you can identify that how many number of valence electrons are present, and also the type of the chemical bonds which they can form with other elements. So, the Lewis dot structure helps us to understand the number of valence electrons as well as the bonds, chemical bonds which are to be formed with other elements. So, based on this Lewis structure, the three sections are given to us, that is three categories of these molecular hydrides. So, first one is the electron deficient hydrides. Now, electron deficient in the sense there is lack of electrons. It doesn't have so many electrons that an atom can attain stability or it can form the bond. It is said to be electron deficient, or lack of electrons is being found in these particular hydrides. So, lack of electrons, or there are only few electrons which are present in these atoms. Now, for example, B2H6. Now, B2H6 in the sense, based on Lewis structures, if you are talking about it, boron has an atomic number 5, right? So, here you write it as 1s2, 2s2, 2p1. Correct? So, here 2, 2, 4 and 5. Now, here, as you can see, the number of valence electrons are how many? 3. Right? That is in the second shell. So, how many you have here? 1, 2 and 3. If suppose this is the Lewis dot structure. Okay. Now, here, how many hydrogens are present over here? 6 hydrogen atoms are present. But boron has only 3 electrons. Right? So, each hydrogen has one single electron each. So, there are 6 electrons from hydrogen coming up, and boron has only 3 electrons, which makes boron less in the number of electrons, right, when you compare it to hydrogen atoms. So, that is why we say they are electron deficient, so that they can get bonded to 6 of the other hydrogen atoms. So, they are said to be electron deficient, or they have only few electrons when compared to the atoms which are getting bonded to this particular boron, that is hydrogen. So, usually these electron deficient, the hydrides are of group 13 elements, okay, especially they come under group 13. That is why it is a p block element, and especially electron deficient, when you talk about it, these are usually the group 13 elements. So, now when you see that they are electron deficient, that means they tend to gain electrons, right? So, they want electrons from the other atoms so that they can obtain or attain its octet configuration or stability. So, here when boron, it tends to attain stability, then only there is formation of bond, right? So, here they tend to accept electrons. That's why they are called electron acceptors. Okay, as they are electron deficient, they tend to gain electrons and accept electrons and become stable. So, Lewis acids are the type of acids which tend to accept the electrons. So, that is a particular type of an acid given by the Lewis. Okay. So, this you will be studying in the other chapter, that is equilibrium, when you will be studying the different concepts given by different scientists of this acid and base theory. Okay. But for now, Lewis acids are what? They are the electron acceptors. So, group 13 element hydrides, that is electron deficient hydrides, act as Lewis acids. So, this is the thing to be remembered over here. So, they are mostly the electron acceptors, and also they are said to be the Lewis acids. So, that's how you define Lewis acids. Okay. So, if it is Lewis bases, what happens? They tend to donate electrons. Okay. They give the electrons. Whereas Lewis acids tends to accept the electrons and become stable. So, this is the type of hydride, that is molecular or covalent hydride, that is electron deficient hydride. So, let us move on to the next one, that is electron precise hydrides. Now, precise in the sense they have certain number of required electrons with them. They do not lack with the number of electrons, rather they do not have extra to but they are precise. They have required number of electrons with them. For example, you have CH4. Carbon has 4 electrons, 4 valence electrons, right? So here 1, 2, 3, 4. And hydrogen, how many are there here? One over here, another one, then you have another one. So there are 4. Then they form bonds over here, right? So this is how. So here 4 electrons are donated by carbon 2 and here 4 electrons from hydrogen 2. So they are equal in number. That means nobody is dominant 2, right? And nobody is lower than that. So here they are said to be precise in nature. That's why we say that they have required number of electrons and these are electron precise type of hydrides. So usually the examples are CH4, all these group 14 elements come under electron precise, okay, hydrides. So this structure is actually said to be tetrahedral, okay, tetrahedral, something like this. One hydrogen here, other hydrogen here, another hydrogen here. So this is how, this usually comes at the back, okay. So it is tetrahedral, something like this. Here in the center you have carbon, on the top, side and behind. Okay, so this is how the structure of methane looks like, and methane is an example for electron precise hydride. So especially from the group 14 elements. And the last one, that is the third type of molecular hydride is electron rich hydrides. Now electron rich, as the word says, it is rich in electron or it has excess of electrons with them. Especially you have the examples like ammonia. Ammonia, here nitrogen has excess of electrons. Now nitrogen, the atomic number is 7. So you write it as 1s2, 2s2, 2p5. Correct? 2p3. Okay, 3 plus 2, 5. 5 plus 2, 7. So here you have how many valence electrons? 5 electrons here. So nitrogen has 5 electrons. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whereas hydrogen are how many here? 3. That means each hydrogen will have 1 each electron and then totally there are 3 electrons. Whereas nitrogen has 5 electrons. Right? So here if hydrogen is getting bonded to 3 of them, so this stays as extra electron, right? They do not get bonded. That's why we say they are lone pair of electrons which are present in the nitrogen atom. So how many pairs are there here? Only one pair of lone pair of electrons. Okay, so one pair is present, okay, in nitrogen. If you talk about H2, so here oxygen is actually 6 and 2 hydrogen are getting bonded. So here they will have 2 lone pair of electrons, okay. If you are talking about hydrogen fluoride, then they will have 3 pairs of lone pairs, okay. So here based on this, they are said to be electron rich. They have extra electrons present which are present as lone pairs, okay, on the particular central atom. So based on that we say they are electron rich hydrides. So especially they are the elements from group number 15 to 17. So these are said to be the electron rich hydrides. And if these are electron acceptors which are electron deficient, then these have to be electron donors, okay, and that's why we call them as Lewis bases. So these hydrides act like Lewis bases. So this is about the electron rich hydrides. So totally concluding, the second type is the covalent or molecular hydrides, especially they are covalent in nature. They are p block elements. There are 3 types: electron deficient, then precise, and the last one is rich. Okay. So this is about the covalent hydride. So last type of the hydrides, that is third type of hydrides, metallic or non-stoichiometric hydrides. Now when you say that it is metallic hydride, obviously the metals which form hydrides are to be considered, okay, and they are non-stoichiometric in nature. Now non-stoichiometric in the sense their proportion by mass will vary or they are different, okay. They do not hold the law of constant proportion. So that does not hold good for these hydrides which are formed by these metals. Now usually these metallic or non-stoichiometric hydrides are formed with the D or F block elements, okay. So both of these blocks can form such hydrides. Now especially when you talk about group 7, 8, 9, Okay, these hydrides, okay, they do not exist, so they cannot form, these block elements cannot form the metallic hydride especially, and even in group 6 no element will form the metallic hydride except for chromium, which forms chromium hydride. So chromium hydride is written as Cr chromium and then hydride. Okay, other than that, all the elements, all the group elements can form hydrides. So exceptions are these which do not form hydrides. One is 7, 8, 9 as well as 6. But in 6 there is one, that is chromium hydride, which is formed. Now these hydrides, okay, the hydrides or the metallic hydrides or the non-stoichiometric hydrides are the good conductors of heat and electricity. But their capacity to conduct heat and electricity is not as good as they are with their parent metal. Now suppose chromium hydride, if we say they are good conductors of heat and electricity, that means it is not that good as normal chromium is. Okay, so the parent metal is said to be a good conductor of electricity when compared to their hydrides, but they are conductors of heat and electricity. So that is one thing. And also it was thought that before, okay, these metallic hydrides, now metallic hydrides in the sense they have formed metal as well as the hydrogen bond, right? Now here they conduct heat and electricity first of all, and if you are talking about the structure of them, okay, now suppose there is a metallic hydride, okay, and there are atoms present, metal atoms present, and then you have the next layer, okay. Now you see that there is a space between this particular atom, all the 4 adjacent atoms, there is some space over here, right, in between. So here it was thought that the hydrogen or whatever the metal atoms are present and hydrogen, that is the hydride, okay, it is taking up the position in between, which is called the interstice of an atom. Okay, so it was thought that the hydrogen is actually present in the interstices of the metal lattice. Metal lattice in the sense the whole metal atoms which are arranged in a particular manner. So here it was thought that hydrogen was present in the interstices of these metal lattices. Okay, so this was a main property for the preparation of different compounds, and also this was used in the application of different compounds. Okay, so here these interstitial hydrogen, okay, present in between the metal lattice are called the interstitial hydrides. So that particular whole metal hydride was called the interstitial hydrides. Very important, interstitial hydrides. Why? Because it was thought the hydrogen was present in the between of those metal atoms, or we say interstices of this metal lattice. Okay, so that is why they are called interstitial hydrides. Now, except for these metals, that is nickel, palladium, actinium and cerium, except for these metals, all the other metals, okay, will have a different arrangement of these atoms with the metal as well as hydrogen over here. These metals will have the same arrangement as far as they have their own parent metal. That is, particular nickel hydride and nickel was similar, palladium hydride and palladium was similar, their arrangement was same. But all the other elements had different, arrangement of their metals with their, according to their hydrides. Okay, so this main, concept of different, having different arrangement of atoms was used up as an application for, the catalytic hydrogenation, for the hydrogenation purposes or reducing agent purposes. All these, the metals were used up, or metallic hydrides were used in order to absorb the hydrogen in a particular atom and the arrangement of different metal lattices. So the way they try to absorb hydrogen and arrange, themselves in a particular lattice makes them applicable for the different purposes like preparation of different compounds and catalytic hydrogenation. So for all these, the concept was used, that is absorption of hydrogen on a particular transition element. Now these are the transition elements, right? So absorption of hydrogen in that particular lattice, and the way they form a regular arrangement of these atoms inside the lattice was applicable in different mediums. Okay, and metals like palladium and platinum especially, okay, these absorb a large volume of hydrogen. Okay, so they had, you know, a kind of vacant spaces wherein they can fill hydrogen, especially that is palladium and platinum, so they can absorb large volume of hydrogen and they can store it, you know, inside their particular lattice. And this property was called was noted by for these metals, and it was told that it is a very good storage media. Storage media of what? It is hydrogen. So they could absorb a large volume of hydrogen and store it in them, and that is why these metals were said to be the storage media. So it had a high potential of this hydrogen storage, and also they were used up in different applications. Okay, they had very good applications, especially in the catalysis as well as the hydrogenation processes. These metal hydrides are very useful. So this is the metallic or non-stoichiometric hydrides, especially with the D block and the F block elements. Okay, and these can be used as a hydrogen storage source. So this was all about the hydrides, especially the three types of hydrides, that is ionic hydride, metallic hydride and the molecular hydrides, which are very important, and also their types and few of their examples, okay, which is to be remembered. Okay, so let us wind up today's class, children, and let us move on to another topic, that is about water, the hard water, soft water and their structures in the next class. So see you all in the next class, children.